Good day from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. The title of our episode, Identity Politics USA. We've been working on this for some time, and I started a part of the episode, which will be, by the magic of editing, put together with this episode. Identity politics is the kind of topic you could be on continuously as long as you're in the cycle of the 2020 election and the present administration being here. We've added some new things to it. We're basing it upon an article in the Salon, and also at the same time we'll look at the occurrence in Baltimore with the Representative Elijah Cummings as one of the many bench stops, and we'll preview the debate tonight in Detroit, and we'll have a little special on it. It'll be basically called the all-white debate in Detroit. That's our working title there. It would be the all-European debate because all the candidates that are appearing tonight will be Europeans, whereas tomorrow night the candidates of color, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris will also be there. For that particular one, am I leaving anyone out? Well, I think we have the two there. Sometimes it's difficult to forget who they are. But firstly, we're on the 30th of July 2019. Hopefully, we always try to get a timestamp in here. And as the late Jerry Pippin used to say, there were two ways of dealing with a candidate of DJ Trump's type that uses personal attacks on a specific person or a city or a group of people, specifically people of color. If you recall the attacks on immigrants, particularly immigrants from Mexico. That was early in his campaign, how they were violent, how they were racist, etc., how we need to build a wall. Well, what that does is it brings to his message action. Building the wall is an action statement. So candidates like to be in action. They normally, not DJ Trump, but they roll up their sleeves. Usually the shirts are white. And unbutton their ties and go at it. Some actually have walked across the state, various things of that nature to show that they are in action. Whereas DJ Trump sits on his posture and tweets and calls names. Well, name calling is something you do on the schoolyard, and that used to be called bullying. But what old DJ has done in the case of Representative Cummings of Baltimore is claimed that he's a bully. A political consultant called that a flippable. But one thing to always remember, as Jerry used to say, a flippable can be flipped. And that is one of the solutions to their problem. But they have to understand how to do it. The only way to counter someone like DJ Trump is show action. So if I were Congressman Cummings, I would be in Baltimore, walking around the district, talking to people, perhaps carrying groceries for a little old lady, if you can find a little old lady, talking to teenagers at a job development center, talking to young people about programming, and anything that's positive and anything that is action-oriented is what you do. That is how you counter that type of advertisement. President Obama did it beautifully in 2018. That was after the dirty and most racist, low-life primary we had seen up to that point in America. That was when he was challenged by Hillary Rodham Clinton, then a senator from New York. So thus it was set. He went on radio. That's where the dirty business was done, and attacked. He used the same stratagem on the late John McCain. And on TV, he appeared to be the great conciliator, the man of modesty, always smiling, greeting people with a positive message 95% of the time. And it was enough to gravitate people towards his campaign to look at, yes, we can, and we can do incredible things. And they did incredible things. President Obama swept into the White House. He was the first African American to sweep in there, at least declared African American. Others have been rumored to be. But nonetheless, that is the way that you run that type of campaign. Now, John McCain was a man of principle, so he was not on Twitter running fake news out and various types of things. In fact, he discouraged that. I can recall at a rally in Minnesota, it was some old lady that insisted that Barack Obama was born in Kenya. And Senator McCain listened to her patiently, and he said, "No, lady, you're wrong." And finally, he just got mad and pulled the mic out of her hand, and that was the end of that story right there. But what he was telling his followers is, I will not go that way. And at the same time, DJ Trump was leading the birthers. Why? Because he had an audience that believed that particular fairy tale. But what happens there is you cross. The state of Hawaii had said one thing, and a state is the final arbitrator. Had President Obama been named Jack in the Box, and they said that he was born in Hawaii, Jack in the Box would have been born in Hawaii, the birth certificate would have been certified. The end of the argument there, that's what states do, and they do it well. So we've seen that sort of thing before, but not in the magnetism. Now, first of all, that was 10 years ago. Social media has evolved in the sense that we've had Cambridge Analytica and other kinds of those kinds of operations. They did more damage as Cambridge Analytica and their deep dive, and the Republicans have always been in the data mining racket. They used to be in it when they were just sending postcards and letters out. A man named Vigory was doing that. At the time I was doing mail order and I met Vigory. He was selling rabbits. But anyway, we were selling addresses. That's how low it went. But you have that kind of posture there, and when you can data mine, you can find out if the individual subscribes to whatever. Parent Magazine, Computer News, I don't know, it's not in business anymore, but various other kinds of publications, and also you have the individual's preferences, what they buy, whether they're buying online, what they're talking about online, all that, as they call it, metadata, is available. So you can use all that to match with the individual and how you influence that particular individual. If it's an NRA member, if the person's a veteran, etc., that is your type of person. And if the person is religious, you can use that particular situation to persuade. So that is what DJ Trump's people done, and at the same time trying to project the fact that Hillary Clinton's campaign was the best organized, had the best, quote-unquote, big data. She had big data, there was no doubt about that, but her big data was not as accurate as DJ Trump's. And then you had the other kinds of problems there, the so-called server, which really wasn't a server, but that to the normal person that doesn't know what a server is and what a server isn't, you use the word server, well, it's good as anything else. It's good as having a Tea Party on your team. And then came the FBI director in there, announcing that they were investigating. That was the announcement after the announcement that there was no factual situation to indict Hillary Clinton. But then there was this disruption. That was worth a point right there in the election. There were some people on the side, not very many, but also you had the controversy that the Democratic Party had created with Bernie supporters. Many of us were not attuned to dealing with Hillary Rodham Clinton, period. So we were with Jill, wherever we were. So there were hundreds of thousands of people not in that particular circumference, not available. And then you had other people, over 40% of them just didn't bother to vote for one reason or for the other, some weren't registered, etc. So you were dealing with a very small percentage of people in those Midwest states and Pennsylvania. From 60 to about 80,000 votes was the whole ball game. So you had Michigan and Wisconsin, almost Minnesota, but Hillary Clinton pulled that one out. And you were dealing with some of the same people, working class type people. And some of those people had voted for Barack Obama, not once but twice. And that is one of the things that people have been trying to answer why that happened. Were a little bit different type of, they were economic people as opposed to the white supremacist types that are dealing with identity politics. But you have to remember, when people are in distress, they flirt with many, many things, as what happened in the UK with Brexit. Brexit was one of those situations. It was an emotional thing, a cry for independence of the UK from the EU. Well, they decided, okay, they would leave. It was a full pointer. But the problem was they had no idea the consequences of trying to leave the EU. And they still have not left. They now have a prime minister, Tory prime minister, or conservative, in Boris Johnson, that says he's leaving. And it'll be a quote-unquote hard Brexit, where they could leave with no deal at all. Well, Boris Johnson has up to the end of October, but he could leave now. He could inform the EU that he is leaving next week. And he could leave with no agreement. Bye-bye. And at the same time, pound is down to about $1.20 and counting down. This is one of the problems with these right-wingers. They really don't understand a global economy. They do not. And this is a damage that will be done to the EU economy, is being done now. If they leave, many of the large corporations that are now in the UK will move elsewhere. There will be layoffs and redundancy. That is part of what is going on. And if we go to the local scene here, DJ Trump first talked about 4% growth. Now he's down to 3%. He got 2.1% of growth, but at the same time, the Fed is poised tomorrow to cut the interest rate. What that tells you is the economy is not doing as well as DJ Trump is advertising it. That is one of the things the Democrats have to talk about, bread and butter issues. No doubt about that one. So thus you've had a stimulus package, we call it that, a tax cut, $1.2 trillion, unprecedented. But what that tells you is a lot of artificiality has been created in this economy. In terms of artificiality in an economy, you can only go so long with that. Dr. Keynes at Millard Keynes talked about that. It's called Keynesianism, neo-Keynes, what do you want to call it? We talk about that incidentally on another program here at WBRN, the Boston Red Network, called Numbers Man. It's This Week in Economics. Usually, sometimes we change the title, but it's on some of the same outlets. iHeart, it's there. It's on Spreaker. It's on Google Podcasts, etc. Anyway, that's enough of that. But what we're trying to do is mold this identity situation, and by using the England or United Kingdom as an example of what happens when you evoke nationalism. Now, there are several countries that are experimenting with this nationalist situation, including the Russian Federation under V.I. Putin. That is where some of that started. But nationalism has never worked. It didn't work in the 30s, in 39, on the Schicklgruber. That was Hitler in Germany. His situation was to seize as much land, kill as many people as possible, and it could work. Well, it didn't work. The Allies, as they were called at that time in the Great War, laid ruin to Germany. That was what happened to them. Their economy was devastated. They were a little lucky, serendipity, in that the U.S. was industrialized at the time and could help them and Japan come out of it. But it took years. They were living, as they would say, in the rough. And France and all of Europe was pretty much devastated after that war. It did not need to be. But today there's a totally different situation there. The world has changed. It's become more globalized. Now we have knowledge work. Incidentally, on an open source report, we'll talk about the latest breach at the organization Capital 100 million records there. Some young, I don't know if she's young, but a woman out of Seattle. And she deposited the information on GitHub. Anyway, that shows some of the imbalance in the enterprise. Legacy systems, in other words, old computers, very large operation, not secure at all. The IT department there should be fired and made redundant. So there are a lot of problems within the American system. Bernie Sanders has pointed out many of those, and it's in healthcare. Healthcare has to be taken care of. They have to go towards a national healthcare plan for economic reasons, and as one commentator said, they have to explain the costs of these various drugs. And Bernie went to Canada, Windsor, Ontario, and there you can buy insulin at 1/10 of what it costs in the U.S. under their nationalized system in Canada. So that is something that the Democrats could talk about and should talk about. That, assuming it will be in a debate. It's not all about Russian interference there, where they did interfere or not. The biggest threat to the American electoral system is not the Russian Federation or China or anyone else. It is identity politics and all of its attributes that enables this administration to go into the forests, the land, and clear-cut the trees, do fracking and various other instruments of destruction, destroy the school lunch program and the safety net. It's already down by about 50% when we talk about food sufficiency, SNAP, etc. Those are problems that affect real people, and we have to continually look at those. Anyway, enough of this. Let's go to a little bit of polling today. This is from the Quinnipiac Organization University here in Connecticut. We'll just briefly go over it. They have Vice President Biden with 22%, Kamala Harris with 20%, Elizabeth Warren 14%, Bernie Sanders 13%. There, this was the July the 2nd poll, and what we have to Joe Biden has 34% of it is Democrats there, and this is a national poll. Elizabeth Warren has 15%, 12% for Kamala Harris, and 11% for Bernie Sanders. So Bernie has went from where was he in July the 1st, 13 to 11. Not a lot there. But Elizabeth Warren's dropped a percentage point. Kamala Harris has been the real victim here. She's at 12. She was at 20. And a little bit, we'll go more into this probably later. Anyway, Biden is at 53% of the African American vote, with 8% for Bernie, 7% for Kamala Harris. She has to do much better than that. 4% for Elizabeth Warren. With women, he gets 34%. This is Joe Lunchbox Biden. Elizabeth Warren at 15%, Kamala Harris at 14%, and Bernie at 10%. Very liberal Democrats go for Warren at 29%, 25% for Biden, 15% for Bernie, and 12% for Harris. That just doesn't tell you much about very liberal Democrats. They are not progressives. And somewhat liberals types go 34% for Biden, 16% for Bernie. A little different here. And 14% for Liz Warren, 10% for Harris. Moderate Democrats go 39% for Biden, 12% for Harris. Tells you a little bit there. We can read. I don't have the crosstabs, but 9% for Warren and 8% for Bernie Sanders. Enough of this. To give you a little idea of where the state of the race is on that particular side of the coin, which is a different. This is Salon here. This is part of the article, and we'll look into it a little bit. This has been around for a while. Called they call it white identity politics and white backlash. How we wound up with a racist in the White House. This is by Chauncey DeVega. This is on the 17th of July. And in the salon here, Ashley Jordina, how a bunch of dangerous myths brought us a president for quote-unquote white people. Well, we'd say Europeans. Today, the Republican Party is largely the most powerful and most dangerous white racist organization in the U.S. It's not the world, if not the world. DJ Trump, the president, is its leader. These are plain, if not understood facts. No embellishment is needed. The examples are many over the last few days. DJ Trump has repeatedly dug into his bucket of racist scandalogies, saying on Twitter and elsewhere that for non-white, non-European, would say progressive Democratic women, as he mockingly put it, should leave America. We came in incidentally with a song by Ernie Tubb, known as E.B., America Love It and Leave It, and go back to their own crime-infested, totally broken countries. And he spotlighted there Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ms. Presley, Ayanna Presley, and Rashina Tlaib out of Detroit. They were all born here, and for extra he put in Ilhan Omar. She's a naturalized citizen from Somalia. This is not the first time DJ Trump said such vile things. They're almost word for word the white supremacists or the white nationalist talking points about how being a real American means one must first and foremost be a white, be European. Now, understanding the word white is a political termination, whereas European would fit many of these people. Now, many of these people may not be Europeans. Anyway, Trump's racism is part of a much larger pattern of a white supremacist behavior by his administration, including the internment of non-white or non-European immigrants in concentration camps, banning Muslims. And that plays off the 9/11 situation there, suggesting that African-American athletes who oppose police brutality are traitors, changing the country's immigration law with an aim of maintaining a quote-unquote white majority, disenfranchising non-white people through gerrymandering, voter suppression, voter intimidation, and other tactics, legal and otherwise. Republican Party has been doing this for a long time before DJ Trump ever came around. Republican elected officials almost unanimously support Trump's racist agenda. Leaders such as Old Man McConnell and McCarthy of the House and Senator Mitt Romney have either stated support for his racist comments or avoided answering questions about them. The White House spokesman and right-wing media have, of course, enthusiastically supported DJ Trump, as they would. Public opinion polls show that support for Trump has grown amongst Republican voters because of his racist attacks. Well, that is not unusual. DJ Trump, the Republican Party's racist agenda, is in service to white identity politics and a fundamental assumption that white people should always and forever be the most privileged and dominant group in the U.S. But what are the specific contours of white identity politics, and why has it been so politically effective and personally seductive for DJ Trump, the Republican Party, and their voters? Is white identity politics the external threat to America's multicultural democracy? What does it mean to be white in post-civil rights America? Are white men and white women invested in white identity in the same way? This is what Professor Jordan said, Professor of Political Science at Duke University. Her new book is White Identity Politics. The conversation has been edited for clarity, and we're going to skip over some of this. I'll go ahead and append this. I would not say that Donald Trump's presidency was invincible, but I do think there is a confluence of events that took place for the entire history of the U.S. White people have been a majority of the social, economic, and political power. There have been different periods of time in which that power has seemed less secure and has been chipped away at. Of course, there is the symbolic power that comes from the election of the first African-American president, Barack Obama. The U.S. No longer looks like a quote-unquote white nation which is dominated by white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. The arrangement looks like it will be in jeopardy to many white people. These narratives about the browning of America are very problematic. Historically, in America, groups formerly viewed as non-white are evidently eventually included in the category of who is white, so that white people a group can remain numerically superior over blacks and other people of color, which is why white Hispanics, such as some Cubans, for example, simply have not been grandfathered into whiteness. Latinos had not succumbed by whiteness yet. There is an argument that eventually, as it took place with the Irish, the Italians, that's the 19th and 20th century, those groups transition into whiteness. This is what will happen with Latinos. They've been thinking about that for a long time. In fact, at one time, Latinos were counted as white, because there were not enough of them numerically in the nation to bring it about. The obsession by mainstream corporate media with chronologically the lost American in Trump lander, meaning in the white working class of red state citizens, is a tremendous new genre of writing. One of these themes has been by white Trump voters saying that, well, the blacks had Obama, now we have a white man to do something for quote-unquote white people. That was a big question of what Barack Obama did for African people, not out anymore. In my new book, White Identity, I examine the public opinion data and other research. We'll have to get this book and go from there. Let me just finish this up, and we'll just pinch this on an easy way of doing it. Let me get the last paragraph in here. We're not going to read you an entire book. One of the dangers of white identity politics is that white people as a group definitely do not want to associate themselves with the Ku Klux Klan. Well, that is true. Most of them don't want to do that, but there is a situation, and if we look at public opinion data, DJ Trump is not doing well. There is some hope. A sizable percentage of both quote-unquote white or European Americans, American of color, are angry about the current political moment with DJ Trump and all that he's done to the country. Well, this would be a factual situation, but however, though, what we're faced with here is a little different kind of situation in that the Republican Party that has a majority in the Senate is backing up DJ Trump. And as long as they back him up, they can push through nominees in the Senate to the courts. They can do certain other things, and DJ Trump has the administration, so he can do quote-unquote rulemaking and various other kinds of situations. So in summing up this episode, what the Republican Party has to do, the Democratic Party has to do, is counter DJ Trump with statements that run counter to his statements, and that are practical and that are backed up by facts, such as Congressman Cummings going home to his district. Now, I don't know if there's been a video of a congressman boarding plane, train, or automobile going to Baltimore, but that should be done, and that should be widely distributed. And I was sort of amazed why thousands of people from Baltimore did not go to DJ Trump's Twitter world and counter his claims. Now, obviously some did, but not in great numbers, and you don't see people demonstrating in the streets as in San Juan in Puerto Rico. The governor there, Rosello, is leaving on Friday. He was forced out, and as Professor August Nymp says, this was a popular uprising and it's not finished yet. Whereas in the 70s on the Watergate, Tricky Dick was forced out by the elites in the country before it resulted in this situation of popular movement. But yet, at this point in time, with the debates that are going on and with the status of the Democratic Party and of social media, H was talking about a hit on Biden from the Politico newsletter that goes out, email goes out every day, talking about his age. But his age and DJ Trump's about the same. Bernie is there. Age is not a big factor here. It is politics. Nonetheless, this will do it for us. This is Boston Red and Jerry Pippen Memorial Broadcast Booth on the 30th of July 2019, as we started off here with Ernie here in his America Love It, Leave It, and E.T. as he was called, Ernie Tubbs. Anyway, that was Ernie, and that was in the 70s when he wrote that song. Some of the other working class country artists, entertainers, or whatever, were brought into there. The Merle Haggard, the Hag had The Fight Inside of Me. That was to bring out working class people and their take on what things are going. Now, before I finish this up, let me just, we looked at some national polls as a trend, especially in places like South Carolina, for about 7% of the African American vote. That was from the exit polls, voted for DJ Trump. Now, that would vary from district to district and what those people were doing. Now, to sort of counter his latest fury, he had some Uncle Tom type pastors, ministers. In fact, the niece of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, a disgrace to the King family, she was there. She's a supporter of DJ Trump. But what one has to understand, these characters that he invited there are primarily from mega churches, and they are sponsored by a corporation. It's a corporate situation here. So the important takeaway is, depending on how the economy goes, how long the corporations will stick with DJ Trump. If they decide they will go elsewhere, and there's plenty of Democratic candidates out there they can go to, as Twitter King Booker out of New Jersey, as Kamala Harris, of course, as Joe Biden, and as far as Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren, no, they won't deal with them. Anyway, that does it for us. Good day.
This is Sarah Guthrie, granddaughter of Woody Guthrie.
As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Let's sing it together. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Oh, I've roamed and rambled, and I follow my footsteps through the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is mine. To the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. There was a great high wall there that tried to stop me, and on the wall it said no trespassing.
The title of our episode, Identity Politics USA, from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Boston Red here in the Jerry Pippen Memorial Broadcast Booth. Our date here is the 18th of July, 2019. We were thinking about this in some deep, I suppose, brain usage in this. I'm not sure how deep, but nonetheless, thinking about the whole scenario there. DJ Trump was in Greenville, North Carolina, I believe it was, and he was speaking to an audience. And the only reason we refer to this is we want to talk about technique here and precisely what other commentators have said, and we agree somewhat what DJ Trump is trying to accomplish here. He is continuing to attack the squad that is for newly minted Congress types from various locations in the U.S. There. Mrs. Tlaib from the city of Detroit. She has the historic seat of John Conyers Jr. And from Boston, Ms. Presley, and from Minnesota, Ion Omar. And to round that out, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez out of the Bronx, New York. Roughly born 12 miles from where DJ Trump was born, over in Queens. Now, this sets up a very interesting situation. There are 2 or 3 things happening here. First of all, DJ Trump has decided that his campaign theme is Keep America Great. Well, how do you keep America great? Well, you attack people, but you personalize the targets. Now, normally in campaigns, we deal lots with issues. If you recall, when Brother John Kerry was attacked by the Swift boaters, that was an attack upon him. So it's nothing new, these so-called personal attacks, but not to the extreme that this particular one is being done. The squad is singled out because they're young, they are women of color, and the handlers of DJ Trump sense these young women are going somewhere. And they've taken up progressive politics. They are social democrats, that's all we can say of them. They are not members of any socialist party. Now are they advocating any socialist programs? For example, if you were advocating a socialist program, you would have a national health care. I can remember standing by the baby doctor, for those my age, Dr. Spock, who were talking about a national healthcare program. What that would encompass, you would have a national system of medical delivery. That would be medical centers, the whole 9 yards, such as what you have or had with the VA, the government-run hospitals, government doctors, nurses, and whatever else you need. And they would provide medications, full care. Now, what is being advocated in this campaign, various flavors of it, Medicare for all, that means just using the Medicare system that we now have in place and expanding it. That would be Medicare for all. Biden, Joe Lunchbox Biden, has proposed, and this was originally the idea of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and adding the public option. So the citizens would have an opportunity to get public insurance at better rates than private insurance, but it would not be a system where there would not be private insurance. Now, none of these systems, including the one that Bernie Sanders is talking about, would exclude some types of private insurance. Now, in Canada, they have a national insurance program there, but you can still add on things if you want to pay for it out of your pocket. That is not covered by the plan. And the same way in the UK has a national health service, but there are still quote-unquote private medical centers out there. And various other countries have a mixture of these. Now, the other point is the Green New Deal. That is to be carbon neutral in 50 years. We talked about that on Numbers Man, and we invite you to go to Numbers Man, which you can find on iHeart, on Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, the same as you can find us and the RSS feed. Anyway, nonetheless, we were talking about a study done by the consultancy Moody's Analytics. And they were talking about the economic harm that could be done by climate change. So climate change, folk, is not something that is thought up by some mad professor in a laboratory. It is a fact, and if you were around for last winter, we had the Arctic vortex coming, and this summer, there's floods. I suppose some people in DJ Trump's crowd have to find an ark or whatever the boat was that they had, and they can get on it and sail away, or at least they can stay dry. And of course, then again, you have various other things that's happened in the Big Easy: flooding, ground saturated. Missed the big one this time around, but they'll be coming. The tornadic season will also be coming. So those are things of climate change that are coming, and they all cost money. Period. And that is caused by environmental situations. Now, another item that is coming up is the issue of coal, dirty coal. Well, dirty coal is disappearing because it's being taken out by cleaner burning natural gas. So those are some of what we call the little side issues that are being taken care of. So where does this leave the Democrats? Well, you have these basic issues here, and progressive candidates are pushing those. The squad is pushing, but the squad is doing more than just pushing health care for all and the Green New Deal. They're asking very important questions. They're working on numerous type of legislation, and if you tune in via C-SPAN, they still have a C-SPAN, 30-something years later or whatever, that you can hear some of these hearings. You'll hear Congresswoman Presley, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Talisi, and Representative Omar questioning people on these various committee assignments that they have. They do more than just tweets, and they made it very clear they're not going to take the bait from DJ Trump. Well, why is DJ Trump doing this? Well, he's solidifying his quote-unquote base, which has a lot of white nationalists in it, nationalists, and various other type religious types, etc., to keep those people around some common principles. So he attacks Representative Omar when he made the big error of claiming these people should go back where they come from. Was he want people to go back to Cincinnati, to go back to Detroit, to go back to Boston? Well, that is ridiculous. Representative Omar did come from Somalia as a refugee, but she's been around for a long time now. She speaks better English than DJ Trump and many of his supporters. So that is not an issue. That is the old jingoistic thing of questioning somebody's patriotism. That can go round and round. This is the same character, DJ Trump, but questioned the patriotism of an all-American hero like the late Senator John McCain, who was an all-American hero. No one would have denied that unless they're absolute fool. But this shows what can happen in a vacuum when dealing with a large number of people that know nothing of history, not interested in knowing anything of history, ahistoric, looking at today and not tomorrow. And that is where you are. The promise again, we go to the economy, very important, and that could very well determine this election. If the economy is better, there's a better chance of old DJ slipping back into the White House than if it is not. If it is starts to fall apart, then DJ is going south with it, and he knows that. But it is early for the game that he has. What the progressives and the rest of the Democratic Party have to figure out is how they counter DJ Trump and his message. They didn't do a bad job in 2016 given the type of candidate they had. Now that kind of political malpractice will not reappear. You can take that to the bank, as one would say. And back to LBJ's titular quote, anyone's been to a goat roping contest knows that. But what does have to happen is you can't have mistakes like Nancy Pelosi made of trying to ostracize the squad. It fell apart. Her ostracism just turned into DJ Trump's twit festival there. He went on the attack, and therefore he put the Democratic Party into a state of ostracism or division, at least attempting to do that. And some of the other candidates in this presidential race say, well, I'm not like them. I'm not for the Green New Deal. I'm not for Medicare for all. Well, we at this mic say, so what? You're going to have the hat put on you. Your job is to try to figure out how to get that hat off of you. That can be easily done. Politics is the art of who gets what, when, and where, and how. is the art of negotiation. And rhetoric has always been around. Positions, it can be, as they say, tweeted. But what is also going on here in terms of those of us that are progressives, we have to look to the long haul. You're not just talking about an election next year in 2020. You're talking about 2024, 2028, 2032, when a lot of us probably will not be around. But the Green New Deal will be there. It's a 50-year program, at least a 30-year program, 35-year program. Medicare for all will be there. The need will be there. And depending on what the courts do with the Affordable Care Act, now that will be a big deal breaker there as to what you do about that. Well, those machinations are also coming forward. There has to be some consensus as how to deal with this. Now, we have the progressives led by Bernie Sanders. He's been there before in 2016. And Elizabeth Warren. She has had results across there. She got the Consumer Financial Protection Agency. She coined the idea, formulated, and got it onto law. So that is a different situation. Things that can be done. You have to keep your eye on the prize. And the younger people, the squad, they're learning how to do this. And it's beyond on-job training. They will be fine, as many would say. They are fighting the good fight, and they will continue to fight the good fight into next year. But you have to understand that in this race, all things are not created equal. Yes, you have DJ Trump. You have the Republican Party behind him because they have no place to go. You have the corporate media behind them. There were these manufacturing types sitting there smiling, a collection basically of parasites, when DJ Trump attacked the squad. That was when he started his attack out there, go back where they came from, and now he's saying America loved illegal. Well, the point there is people that love America, patriots, there's a long list of those people from Eugene Debs on to Harry S. Truman to John F. Kennedy. And John F. Kennedy didn't leave Boston. He was killed, murdered in Dallas. But the whole point is there, when you start going to that sort of slippery slope, you have problems. And you have to have a bold strategy. You just can't just say, well, DJ Trump is shooting his mouth off, he's lying again. Well, yeah, that's part of the propaganda that's out there. Well, how do you counter that propaganda? The squad's doing a very good job, but they have to have the help of the party. Nancy Pelosi and that gang, our pal out of Virginia, Abigail, what's her last name there? Anyway, Abigail is out there, and the various others. There are people around here with Spencenberger that have brains, and they need to start using these brains, and not in the sense of divisive. It's how, as a party, and this was a big mistake on the part of some of those blue dogs or whatever kind of dogs they are, to form themselves into some sort of group to oppose things. And that doesn't work out very well, because the problem is DJ Trump's got a bigger microphone for people in their districts that are so persuaded. What you do is you pass legislation that represents the highest and best wishes and goals, etc., of your people in your district. That is what Representative Levy is doing for people in Detroit. That's what Representative Ocasio-Cortez is doing. The same for Representative Presley and in Boston, and the same for Representative Omar for the people in Minnesota. They are doing the business every day, and that's one of the things you have to look at. And you cannot run campaigns like you did in 2016 or 1972, 76, 1980, the Mondale campaigns that fell apart, 86, or 1992 or 96. The atmosphere is different. You have social media there moving along. You have Twitter. You have complacency of the companies that operate Twitter, Facebook. There's no doubt about that. They did, in fact, help out DJ Trump. And why? For the money motive. Simply that. don't get stuck in this Russian trap, what the Russians did or didn't do. There were many other operatives out there way before the Russians ever came to the party. They could have persuaded some people, but there were other instruments there that persuaded people within the African American community. It talked about super predator, etc., to the extent. And there were a number of people there, we don't have to name names, but were paid to do this. And that's the whole thing. They were paid to do it out there. And then there were other people that get their news from YouTube, etc. They running around with the earth is flat. Well, if you can convince a fool that the earth is flat, you can probably convince that same moron that anything is there. And the old question is, well, what did Barack Obama do for African people? Well, what he did for African people was get his rear into the White House. As soon as they seen his black hands there, that was enough right there for this crowd that hangs around DJ Trump. Period. Now, if you go to the extent, well, what has DJ Trump done? Well, the number of redundancies, the unemployment figures are a little bit better, around 6%, but the economy is now going, but again, you have to remember last hired, first fired. So those are some situations. Also, inequality, you're going to have that anytime you have a nationalist, jingoistic type administration. We celebrated 5 years of Mr. Eric Garner being murdered on Long Island. And this is very important. Bernie Sanders spoke about this. Barr dropped the case. And Bernie Sanders talked about it. And this is what front-running candidates have to do. Now, some of the other 2 and 3%ers there, we know we're talking about Senator Booker. Senator Klobuchar denounced it. And the situation is, you denounce something that goes down in the campaign. People remember that. Nonetheless, let's go to some of the polling here, and we'll take a look, Real Clear Politics here. We'll see what's going on in California. 2 polls out of New Hampshire, and then we have the Morning Consult here also. I think we'll do the Morning Consult first, since I just have it set up here. This is the state of the Democratic primaries, a survey of 5,000 registered voters across the U.S. It's the Morning Consult. And who is leading now? They have number 1 there. This is Democratic primary voters in the early primary states, including just voters who live in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, or Nevada. The latest results are based upon 16,504 survey interviews conducted between July 8th and 14th of 2019. For them, they have Joe Lunchbox Biden at 32%, Bernie Sanders at 19%, Elizabeth Warren 14%, Buttigieg at 5%, Beto O'Rourke 3% there. The 2%ers in Yang and Senator Booker. 1% is Michael Bennet, and there are other candidates. We won't get into those, but they can also be tracked here. Second choice, where voters could migrate to, they have there where Bernie Sanders supporters would go: Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and Buttigieg, etc. Name recognition, etc. We look at respondents were asked whether they have a favorable impression of each of the following. Bernie Sanders is 71%, 19% unfavorable. Joe Lunchbox Biden at 71%, also, and 20% unfavorable. Liz Warren 61% favorable, 15% unfavorable. And Kamala Harris at 55%. A lot of that is she's not known, and 15% unfavorable. Beto O'Rourke 42% favorable, 17% unfavorable. Senator Booker from Jersey at 45%. His favorables are a little better than Beto's, and 15% unfavorable. Julian Castro at 36%, and that is because he's just not known very well, 12% unfavorable. Bill de Blasio, he's a mayor of New York, 21% favorable, 25% unfavorable. Kristen Gillibrand, 33% favorable, and that's because she's not known, and 15% there. Buttigieg out of South Bend, 45% is his favorable, 11% unfavorable. Amy Klobuchar, 30% is favorable. That's a good number for her, and 14% unfavorable. I don't know where they came from. And Hickenlooper at 19% favorable, Yang at 24%, Michael Bennett at 17%, Marianne Williamson, the guru, at 13% and 20% unfavorable. Talisi Gilbert, 20% favorable, 13% unfavorable. Easily out of Washington State, 17% there, 10%. He's not known. And Bullock out of Montana at 14%. And that is the roundup there at the Morning Consult. So you see where the candidates are and the ideologies are there. Now let's move on here.
This is Sarah Guthrie, granddaughter of Woody Guthrie.
As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Let's sing it together. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Oh, I've roamed and rambled, and I follow my footsteps through the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. All at once. This land is your land. This land is mine. To the New York